Hey guys, welcome to part 1 of the season finale of Records Near Me. These last 2 episodes feature a record store that is close to home and forever in my heart, and that would be Wuxtry Records in Athens, Georgia. I've bought more records from Wuxtry than any other store I've visited, and that's probably because I spent the last 4 years living within walking distance of the place during my time studying at the University of Georgia. This is where I grew as a record collector, where I found a happy place during stressful times, and even where I learned how to clean a record. I will never forget how the manager, Nate, who we'll actually hear from later, gave me a complete rundown on 3 different ways to clean a record. I was brand new to vinyl and had so many questions, and honestly, it all seemed a little intimidating at first. It wasn't until I worked up the courage to ask a question that I realized nobody was judging me like I had imagined. They were just happy to help me learn. I mean, like in every record store, we're all there for the same reason, because we love music. And Wuxtry taught me that. It became my favorite place in Athens, no matter how much it hurt my already thin wallet. Though, whether your wallet is thick or thin, you will find something good within your budget. They have a great selection of used records of all genres, but they also carry plenty of new records too. If you're unsure of where to begin, or if you're looking to discover something unfamiliar, they have a staff picks section right up front. I check it out every time I go in because I like to read the little notes on the albums that give you a hint of what you're about to experience if you decide to take it home with you. And let me just say, the employees at Wuxtry have such a diverse taste in music, which is probably why the place is so well curated. My favorite section, though, is the local music section because Athens is a music town, and so many great artists, past and present, call Athens home. And Wuxtry is there to support them, whether that be by selling their albums in the store or hanging their poster in the window. That's actually how I discovered a lot of the local concerts I would go to. Wuxtry is right in the center of Athens' music scene, and it has been since it first opened in 1976 when Dan Walls and Mark Mehdi came down from Chicago with a truck full of records looking for a college town to open their record store. Georgia's warm weather is what really sold them on the location, and the first person they met was a man named Brian Cocaine, who was selling newspapers on the corner. Brian just so happened to be married to Kate Pearson, who started the B-52s that same year. She also became one of the first workers behind Wuxtry's counter, and she's not the only musician to have worked at Wuxtry over the years. Some of those people include Brian Burton, aka Danger Mouse, Mike Richmond of Love Tractor, and even Peter Buck of R.E.M. In fact, Peter Buck actually met Michael Stipe in Wuxtry. The two bonded over their shared taste in music, and in 1980, they formed R.E.M., one of the best-selling rock bands in history. And Wuxtry still employs local musicians as if it's a tradition. John Fernandez, for example, has been working there for over 20 years, and he's been in many bands, including the psychedelic pop group The Olivia Tremor Control. Also, Maxwell Mayhew, lead singer of the Asymptomatics, is currently their social media intern. I also sat down with him for an interview, but that's for the next episode. Today, we'll be hearing from Nate Mitchell, current manager of Wuxtry in the Athens location. Though I have been talking non-stop about Athens, there is a second location, and it's located in Decatur, Georgia, east of Atlanta. It opened up 2 years after the original, and Peter Buck actually worked there before transferring to the Athens location and meeting Michael Stipe. For those of you lost on all the names I've been throwing out, make sure to check out the supplementary playlist I made on Spotify so you can familiarize yourself with all of these great artists and also discover some of the current local bands coming out of Athens. I make one for every episode, and the link is in the description. One more thing I should mention, if you're into comic books, don't miss Bizarro Wuxtry in the small space above the Athens store on Clayton Street, as I'm pretty sure it's the only comic book shop in town. Wuxtry is truly a great record store, and if you don't believe me, maybe you'll believe Rolling Stone, Vinyl Me Please, Business Insider, or USA Today, all of whom have declared Wuxtry Records as one of the best record stores in the United States. So make the trip out to Athens and check the place out for yourself. Stay tuned to hear from Wuxtry's current manager, Nate Mitchell, and after, I'll also tell you about some of my favorite records I've picked from Wuxtry over the years. But first, as per usual, the theme song. But this time, it's been recorded by one of my favorite bands in Athens right now, the Asymptomatics.
Records near me, let's go and see what lies behind a record store's mind. If you're lost, get found, take in the sound. It's a place to go when you're feeling low. So if you don't mind,
Hey guys, I'm here at Wuxtry Records right here in downtown Athens, and now I'm sitting with the manager, Nate Mitchell.
Hi there. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. So, can you tell me, as manager, what does that entail? What does that mean? Like, what's your job, basically?
I guess just basically, facilitating the day-to-day operations of the store. That means customer service. It means keeping tabs on, putting out product, buying used stuff, ordering new stuff, taking special orders from customers, getting in touch with people that have ordered stuff so they pick it up. I guess,
That's a lot.
yeah, I guess, everything that, kind of.
Basically, you run everything.
Well, I mean, it's just everything that happens in the course of a day at the store is something that I guess I have the responsibility to oversee and make sure it's getting done.
All right, so bring me back to the first time that you ever stepped foot in Wuxtry. When was it? What was the occasion?
Okay. It's I think 1999. It was spring break time. I was coming down I lived in New Hampshire at the time, and my roommates played in an indie rock band called the Princeton Reverb's Colonial, and had some connections to Athens, mostly through people that they knew that were part of the Elephant Six music collective. So they had arranged to record an album here in Athens at a studio that was run by Bill Doss of the Olivia Tremor Control. It was called World is Myth Studios. And they came down here to, they booked a week at the studio to make that album, and it featured a bunch of guests of people that were in various Elephant Six bands and other kind of Athens bands of the same era, Masters of the Hemisphere and members of Fable Factory, and a lot of different people that kind of got a little time to shine as guest musicians. And I tagged along with them basically. I got to play a little bit of music on that album, just as one of the many featured guests. And that was spending a week in Athens, staying with a couple of the people from the Masters of the Hemisphere band, and basically any time that wasn't actually at the studio, I was able to come downtown, and got to check out a bunch of the local venues. My friends played a show at the 40 Watt with just happened to work out where the one of the Denver Elephant Six bands, the Minders, were the headliner, and I think the other local band on the bill was the Marshmallow Coast, if I remember right. And my friend's band opened that show, and that was my first show at the 40 Watt. And during the day, just would get to walk around basically. I think I was the one that wanted to wake up early and kind of hit downtown, and then was able to get over to the studio. They were, I don't know if they had to start at noon or 1 o'clock. I forget what their schedule was like. But I remember most of the time I had was spent kind of in the earlier part of the day, and I know that, one of the places I dropped into was Wuxtry, and if I remember right, I think probably the first record that I bought was kind of an oddball choice, but I saw it and I was just like, all right, I gotta buy this and just check it out. It was a side project of the Butthole Surfers called Daddy Longhead, and the album was called Cheetos, and it kind of had a really gross cover, and I was just like, I don't know, this looks really weird.
How did you go from just a customer in 1999 to manager? And what made you decide that this is what you wanted to do?
Let's see. Well, I guess I probably could have predicted that this would have been my career path in high school, because I remember last couple years of high school, it was if you were real clever, you put the last class as your study period so you could leave school early. And me and my friend James would do that, and then when we leave school and walk downtown, usual routine was stop at Dunkin' Donuts, get coffee and a donut, hang out there for a second. He would usually keep walking to his mom's office and get a ride home with her. I would then walk over to Salvation Army and just, check the thrift racks, check the records, see if there's anything good that popped up from the day before. I was basically doing this every day. Yeah. And then walk a couple blocks over to the mom and pop record store that hadn't been open that long. I think let's see, this would have been around like 93 or so, and I think it had just opened around that time, this store called Relax Music. And this was before Napster and internet stuff, had music everywhere, Spotify, all that. So their thing, they had like a wall of all like the new releases and all these like CD players or like Discman things that headphones, but there's like 20 of them, and then just every week new releases. And so I became the record store nuisance that certainly spent a lot more time listening to CDs than actually buying stuff. Most of the stuff I bought there was like the budget cassettes that were like $1, but actually found pretty good stuff a lot of times. A lot of people are getting rid of their like punk rock and alternative music cassettes, and they were selling them cheap. So anything that like basically sounded like a cool band name or interesting cover art, I would take a chance on it for $1. Yeah. And then keeping up with like new stuff like every week, even though I think that it's such a regular presence, I would always kind of like ask like, you need anyone to sweep the floor or anything like that. It was one guy that ran the place. He didn't have any employees. His name was Rick. Yeah. And he's like, oh man, I wish I could afford that, but it's just me. And it wasn't like the store was slammed busy. It was like upstairs from like a music store that had been around since probably the 1930s or something. So he opened up in the upstairs. But they had used CDs, used records, some new records. At that time, there wasn't really that much vinyl being made brand new, so he was mostly a used store. But yeah, I just really liked being there. I just liked being able to hear new music. And then, a few years later, I got involved with college radio. It's just, I don't know, I guess kind of grew up in a culturally isolated place. And like, as soon as like kind of had that, exposure to college radio and true like indie alternative underground music, it just kind of just totally went down that path. And basically the more oddball stuff the better. I don't know, I guess it was a little, as far as first time visiting Wuxtry versus becoming manager, that was a long time, long gap in between there. And I'd lived in like some small towns in New Hampshire, but if there was a record store, there was generally never any openings or anything. I did apply at every place that I lived that had like the little mom and pop place, and I didn't live in a big city, so there was no like Tower Records or anything like that. I guess as far as kind of why pick Athens, part of it did have to do with playing in a band called Cars Can Be Blues, like kind of a indie pop sort of thing. And just like my friends that had booked studio time in Athens, I don't know, I put it in my head that like, oh, I guess that's just what you do, because there really weren't any like recording studios where I lived. So we did the same thing, and I think it was 2004. Booked studio time with Jason Neesmith, because he had recorded some bands that we liked from Athens. And I don't know, at the time it was just like, that was, it's like the Elephant Six stuff and the indie pop stuff was like what I was listening to the most, and kind of really appreciated what was going on with that scene. Kindercore record label, before it was a pressing plant, was just putting out great stuff, like great albums, all in the late 90s, early 2000s. So we kind of figured like, all right, this is a town that really knows indie pop stuff. And when we were down here recording, we played a show at the Caledonia. That's where I met Mike Turner, who was had just recently moved to Athens and became was hired as manager of the store. and he agreed to put out our stuff on his label. It didn't actually come out until 2005. We did a cross country tour that went pretty badly in the sense that we had this little school bus that was converted to run on waste vegetable oil, and it broke down like all over the country. And so we figured like this thing, like the bus was just like, it was just like hanging in by a thread, and I just figured like, all right, Athens, we'll like kind of stop there, and like we know enough people, we could get jobs, we can just kind of save up some money to get back up north to New England. And that never happened. We ended up staying permanently.
Live in the South.
And so I worked in restaurants and had other just regular jobs that didn't have anything to do with music or anything. Delivering auto parts and just other kind of temp stuff. And it was like somebody had left that worked here for a while, and they had like. I think it was Saturday night. They needed someone. They just were short, and I had been coming in here like for 5 years at that point, and like I had already had familiarity with Dan Wall, the owner, and I was already a very regular presence in the store, and finally got put on to officially. Start working for a 1 day a week shift, and that turned into 2 days a week, and then a couple years later it was 4 days a week, and and then 2018 Mike left, and I took over as store manager.
Wow. So. That's an awesome story of how you got here.
Yeah.
So who typically comes in this store? Is it a lot of college students or tourists? Or
kind of both. I feel like our store, since maybe it's just the kind of location of it is right near the campus, just kind of like you got the arches. It's like the beginning of the UGA campus, and we can basically it's within visible distance from the front of the store. So I'd say that UGA students are definitely the the tried and true, just most reliable, demographic of who shops here. But yeah, we do get a lot of tourists, a lot of people that are big R.E.M. fans from all over the world will visit this store, and they want to, just ask some questions about, Peter Buck working here, which is fine. And I'm always impressed at how, someone from like Colombia or, I don't know, just ends of the earth, just right, exactly. It's such a beloved band, like all across the world, and you get people from all different countries that drop in here, and they really know. They know like the band's history and back catalog, even if they like barely speak English. So yeah.
Have you ever been starstruck by somebody that's come in the store?
Yeah, there's a couple people. I'd say probably one of the most like, I don't know, like I was just like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm talking to this person, is probably when we got a visit from DJ Shadow, and I'm a big fan, and like I definitely know like he's the guy that is looking for obscure stuff to sample, and it's like, wow, if he finds the right album here, it could be a new track on one of his things. And I was like, almost like, I don't know, would love to be the one that it's like, that song by DJ Shadow, it's like, yeah, he found that sample in our store, it's just, I don't know, I was just thinking, and there was a couple things he asked to if we could put on, just wanted to check out, and he bought a decent stack of stuff, and he was quiet, polite, definitely a kind of introvert type guy, but that was one. I guess some of the kind of, as far as not so much starstruck, but just like really good just interactions with people that notable musicians. I had a half-hour conversation with this guy had long hair and a big gray beard, and you're just talking about all these like psychedelic and krautrock bands and stuff for like 30 minutes, and then I realized it's Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes. I did not know that he'd grown like this big woolly beard.
Wow.
And I don't know, I didn't even realize like who was playing at the Georgia Theater that night, which was the Chris Robinson Brotherhood. It wasn't the Black Crowes, but I was just like, I mean, that guy's cool. Chris Robinson, you're a cool dude, and you bought a bunch of good stuff. So
that is awesome.
another good interaction, DJ for Blackalicious, who off the top of my head, I can't think of the DJ name, unfortunately, but try to dub that in later if you can. But he was another one, and instead of asking like where the soul and R&B section was, it comes in and just like first thing he asks is like, "Where's your psychedelic rock?" Like all stuff for like international psychedelic bands. I was like, okay, right over here. And then next thing I know, we're talking for like an hour and a half, and he put me on the guest list for their show, which was at Melting Point, and great show, great guy. So thank you, DJ from Blackalicious. Interactions like that are definitely, I guess, a perk of the job.
Yeah, that is a really good perk. That's awesome. So the next thing I want to hear about is the employee pick section.
Oh yeah.
So
has
that always been there?
Yeah. Yep. It has, and and it's again kind of indicates like what the employee's taste is, and and I think we get people that if their taste is similar to certain employees, like there's people who come in here and they'll flip through John's stuff, and basically that's like if he's given something his blessing, so to speak, then it's like indicates that it's worth checking out. I feel like we do a good job. Different people focus on different stuff. I think John is kind of more into the avant-garde and esoteric jazz and ambient music, world music. He orders most of the international stuff that we carry. I feel like my taste is kind of stuff that's definitely unusual or hard to categorize, or it's just I don't know, it's kind of all over the place, and I feel like Jarrett's a little more consistent, where it's a lot of metal and post-hardcore and kind of classic 90s kind of aggro guitar type stuff.
I like that you guys all have a different taste in music.
If everyone had the exact same taste, I feel like it wouldn't be as interesting of a store. And there's kind of people that are a little bit more behind the scenes that kind of help out with suggestions. There's someone, a guy named Bart that maintains our classical music section, and that's kind of his forte. So it's like one section that's just handled by someone that's kind of otherwise totally separate from the other employees. He used to be a full-time employee back in the 90s at Wuxtry, and now works at full-time at the UGA library. And so he kind of has that very neat and organized librarian mentality. So I feel like our classical section is the best organized section in the whole store. So.
Wow, that's good to know. All right, well, one of my favorite parts about Wuxtry is the welcoming and comforting environment. In your opinion, what makes Wuxtry so unique compared to other record stores or even other record vendors?
I guess so. I'd say one thing, maybe location, the fact that the store has been in the same place for 45 years. I mean, we now have like 3 generations of people that have shopped here. I think just its kind of reputation and longevity. We have always offered consignment for local bands, and we try to offer up the window. If someone wants to drop off a big poster or banner, we're happy to help promote new local music. So I think that's one of the things that just kind of stay connected to the community. So I mean, I guess I'd say the thing that probably mostly distinguishes Wuxtry is like the reputation. I mean, it's like a store that like kind of started at exactly the time when the Athens music scene started, so I think that's always going to be kind of its legacy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have one more question for you before we end this. So, what is a musician or group that you wish more people knew about? I
was thinking about different ways to answer this. I really feel like, my employee picks box is stuff that I feel like most people probably, don't have too much familiarity with, either because it's, older stuff that's kind of more obscure and fell through the cracks, or it's new stuff that just hasn't been exposed, just came out recently. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as like a band that, I had a roommate that, introduced me to them, and it was, as far as like the epitome of like punk rock stuff, you'd think like, Sex Pistols and Ramones and Clash and stuff like that. It's like, nope, there was a band that was like way beyond that, and that was like all like 1977 era. Let's backtrack to 5 years previously to Cleveland, Ohio, and the band The Electric Eels, that basically recorded a bunch of like, just basement demos, and this is early 70s, like 1972. I think a lot of the best stuff they recorded was like 1975, and that was around the time that the band just broke up, and all the stuff that was recorded just like sat around, and then I think in 1978 actually got revealed to the public because punk rock had happened, and it's like it's like there's this band from Cleveland that was doing this like years ago, and I mean, the more you read about their backstory, I mean, it's kind of like the ultimate like kind of, I don't know, like music nerd obscurity thing. It's like it's still at the point where it's like you gotta hear it by word of mouth, but it's just guys that really just didn't care. I mean, it's like the most pure like kind of nihilism in both of the way they interacted with each other and the music itself. I mean, you could call them the original anti-everything band, but made these abrasive songs, but they have hooks that are just so catchy, lyrics that it's just like, I mean, at least, if you thought like Johnny Rotten and Sex Pistols was like as snotty as punk rock got, I mean, listen to the Electric Eels. I mean, there's stuff. It blows me away, like how far ahead of the game they were, and how, I mean, it's like punk beyond punk before punk, if that makes any sense. There's a band, Screamers, that were kind of like, part of that first wave of LA punk, but instead of doing it with guitars, they were like, it was like live drums and two keyboard players, one of which was synthesizer, the other one was kind of more like an organ, but as aggressive as a lot of the, I'd say this was a band that actually was a little bit ahead of the curve, where I think they heard the Sex Pistols and then was like, yeah, that's what we want to do. You got like a maniac like Escarita. It's like, if you think Little Richard is wild, well, this is a guy that was probably twice as nuts as Little Richard, doing the same thing. I think, if anything, some people say that Little Richard might have taken more than a bit of influence from Escarita. Had huge hair and sunglasses, and was just crazy wild man on piano-based rock and roll. If you really like gritty, gutsy soul music, then check out Lee Moses. We got Ngozi Family, and that's Ngozi, and just great stuff. I mean, very primitive and kind of like a Black Sabbath type sound, like just, it's aggressive hard rock, but sung by African guys in the 70s in Zambia. And you got some kind of Italian synthwave stuff from the early 80s by Tiziano Popoli, band from the Oakland, California era that really fit more in with the kind of early 90s grunge sound, band called Monoshock. That I mean, if you like the Stooges or Mudhoney, or some of the original 60s kind of heavy rock stuff, but this was a band that was doing it in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's pretty wild stuff. It's also got some psychedelic tinge to it, so yeah, overlooked band, but really good stuff if you're into that kind of music. As far as some of the newer bands, Mood Taeg, and that's spelled T-A-E-G. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But they kind of do a little pastiche of sounding like all this old German stuff from the early mid-70s. Bands like Kraftwerk and Can and Neu. They're a modern band, but that's the influences that they're drawing from, and it's kind of like all that stuff from that was happening in Germany in the early 70s kind of infused into one band that's in the modern era. Public Memory, the album Ripped Apparition was something I heard and liked. Kind of a collaboration, two different people, basically live drums and electronics, Coma World, and some of it kind of sounds like, could be like sort of darker instrumental hip-hop stuff, and then other stuff sounds more like almost like a horror movie kind of vibe. So I don't know, always been trying to listen to new sounds, and stuff that is interesting gets ordered, and a lot of times it's just one or two copies that we get for stuff like that, and just kind of trying to hope that people get as interested in it as I got. But that's just the stuff that I've been listening to. Again, everyone that works here kind of has their own little niche, but these are the kind of things that I like to champion, that I really feel like probably aren't going to get on the radio. And actually, if I can shout out one more thing, another band I've been listening to a lot, it's called Freak Heat Waves, and from Canada, and they had an album recently called Zap the World. And if you want something that's pretty trippy, check out the YouTube videos of the music videos they've made for the songs from that album, and then the album that preceded it. Really good and kind of bizarre, and kind of puts you in a weird frame of mind. All right, thank you very much for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget, it's only part 1 of the season finale. Next episode will feature an interview with Maxwell Mayhew, social media intern for Wuxtry and lead singer of the Asymptomatics, who were so kind as to record my theme song for me, which you heard earlier. Now, as promised, I'm going to tell you about my 5 favorite albums that I've bought from Wuxtry. The first one is the Tapestry album by Carole King, and that's just because it's one of my favorite albums. The next one is Moonlight Sinatra, which is a compilation album of Frank Sinatra singing songs about the moon. I just love the concept. The next one is This Time Around by a local Athens band called Check the Signs. Funny story, I was actually in Wuxtry with a friend. I was looking through the local bands section. I had this in my hand, and my friend looked over my shoulder and said, "Hey, my friend's in that band." So I immediately bought it, and later saw them at Athfest and got to meet them. They're really cool. The next one is You Don't Mess Around with Jim by Jim Croce. Now, this one is obviously a classic. It's also one of my most played albums, and it's kind of a funny story how I bought it. So I was watching Stranger Things, and there's a scene where Chief Jim Hopper and Eleven are cleaning out his cabin, and he pulls out this album, and he puts it on the turntable. And I had already wanted the album, but watching this scene made me want it even more. So I literally paused the show, and I walked to Wuxtry, and I bought it. And I have no regrets. The last album I'm going to talk about is Soft Focus by Hotel Fiction, which is another local Athens band that I highly recommend you check out. I discovered them at Athfest, which is a music festival that happens every summer in Athens. All of my friends agree that they were the best band that we saw. And as soon as I saw that they were selling their album at Wuxtry, I had to make the trip out to go get it. So once again, thank you guys for listening. Make sure you like or follow Records Near Me on your favorite listening platform to stay updated. As we're approaching the end of the year, we're also approaching the end of Season 1 of Records Near Me. So make sure to stay tuned for the final episode. Until next time. And for those of you wondering how an amateur like me can randomly decide to make a podcast, I've been using Anchor by Spotify. It's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And when hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, everywhere. And it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Best of all, though, Anchor is totally free. So if you want to make a podcast like me, just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.